Ever since these guys were introduced, who, if we're all being honest, look exactly like the kind of people who'd walk down the Oscars red carpet, ever since they were introduced, they have both intrigued me and confused me. At first glance, they are really enigmatic, and I completely agree with that. But I don't think it's a complete mystery as to their identity, and that is exactly what we're going to be talking about in this video. So please, sit back, relax, grab some prawns if you want, and enjoy as we delve into these mysterious blokes. If you aren't aware, there are 7 of these mysterious guys. What is there also 7 of? Well, there are 7 dwarves, but that is not the topic of today's video. There are actually 7 mausoleums. Now, if you don't know, mausoleums each hold a soulless demigod. Now, considering there are 7 mausoleums, each holding 7 soulless demigods, and there are 7 of these characters, it seems a bit too much of a coincidence to me. Now, that by itself isn't enough evidence to make any sort of concrete or semi-concrete theory. So what do we also know about the mausoleums? Well, the mausoleum knights which guard them have the Castle Soul symbol on their shields. What do we know about the Castle Soul knights? Well, their whole goal is to, well, bring about souls into the soulless demigods. Who is telling these people at Castle Soul to do this? Well, Miquella. And who do these people inside the DLC trailer follow? Well, none other than Miquella himself. Castle Soul tells us how they want to actually achieve bringing souls back into the soulless demigods is to in fact bring about an eclipse. Basically, in our world, an eclipse is when the moon moves in front of the sun, eclipsing it, blocking its light. Now you have partial eclipses or total eclipses like a few months back. If we're talking about in regards to Elden Ring and what an eclipse means in Elden Ring, well, I don't bloody know. Your guess is as good as mine because we really don't have enough information to actually fully ascertain what an eclipse actually is. Is it a metaphorical term used for something else? Is it a physical thing where something happens in the sky and that's what brings it forth? We really don't know. We've not given enough information. And I think that's part of the beauty of it. The mystery, the intrigue. And hopefully this very much suspenseful mystery will come to a climax in the DLC and we will actually get an answer to what an eclipse is in regards to Elden Ring. Something that's been on my mind since I went down the White Rabbit's rabbit hole, I've been wondering, well, if these guys in the trailer are actually the soulless demigods from the mausoleums, why do they seem to have souls? Now you might be wondering what I mean. Well, there's a big theory going around that the one at the front is in fact the one that's narrating the DLC trailer. Along with the image we saw, released by Bandai Namco, looks a lot like the guy standing at the front. So it makes me think, well, if they have personalities, as the narrator does have emotion in her voice and does talk about the past, how on earth, considering all of that, can they be soulless? Well, in my opinion, they can't be. I do believe that at one point in time, these mausoleums did hold soulless demigods, but for one reason or another, I think they do have souls now, and that would imply that the eclipse has occurred. Now my theory on this has to do with the fact that Miyazaki has said that the Shadow of the Erdtree was originally 2 separate DLCs, but by the fact that they are now combined, that means 2 different stories are going on at once. I believe that maybe at the end of the first DLC we might get some kind of eclipse. The climax is us bringing about the eclipse, or more likely in my opinion, Miquella the Unalloyed. I believe that the relationship between the soulless demigods and Miquella might be more in depth than simply, oh well, they're kind of related to me, so let's just save them. I think prior to being soulless, and when they had a soul, they knew Miquella. I think this because they know shit. If the narrator is one of these 7 dwarves, and if this narrator is in fact a soulless demigod, or at least used to be a soulless demigod, and is brought back to life in some eclipse that possibly happens within the DLC, as in the current game, the eclipse has not happened. So if the eclipse is going to happen, it's going to happen in the DLC, and so their souls are going to come back in the DLC. They know all about the beginning of the Erdtree from the Miquella the Great. This sort of implies, considering if the eclipse happens halfway through the DLC, where are they going to have time for Miquella to like go, hey, sit down brothers, we're gonna have a long talk about the past. Seems more likely to me at least that this conversation probably happened eons ago, and once their souls have come back, they're going back to perhaps their friend, their mentor, their leader. After all, the soulless demigods are stated by a spirit to be Marika's unwanted children. That abandonment and betrayal by the Golden Order surely would lead to some sort of resentment, and considering Miquella opposes everything the Golden Order stands for, it only makes sense for them to flee and turn coat to Miquella's side. I think there's another possible route you could go down, considering this is Miquella we're talking about. We know that he bewitches his followers, the best example being the bombers inside the Erdtree. I know this sort of realisation that they wanted to just kamikaze pilot everyone happened after the realisation that Miquella had been kidnapped. But they are still bewitched. That doesn't change that they still have the mist of the bewitching above their heads. They are still under Miquella's control. So is it out of the realm of possibility that Miquella is in fact manipulating these 7 followers of his, who just so happen to be demigods in their own right? The Mausoleums, after all, can bring back the remembrances of the past. They are very much still powerful forces, and for Miquella to have them on his side would surely be a valuable asset, especially considering the inevitable slasher flick we're going to inflict upon the Land of Shadows. To add on to the bewitching theory, if we go and look at what the narrator says in the second bit of the trailer, it's a very stark contrast to everything else we hear about Miquella in previous trailers. So it makes you wonder, what's different about the narrator? Well, to me the most obvious answer here is that the narrator is bewitched. We know that Miquella isn't against bewitching his kin. The best example, in my opinion, is Mohg. It very much seems to me that Mohg is actually bewitched by Miquella. Miquella is said to have divested himself of his strength, of his flesh, of all things golden. But if Mohg kidnapped him and put him in the cocoon and that's what led to the Land of Shadows, then that kidnapping surely couldn't have been very involuntarily. Because if he's choosing to go to the Land of Shadows, choosing to divest himself, then he isn't being kidnapped, he's willingly going. So that makes me think that maybe him being taken by Mohg was all part of the plan. I truly do believe that Mohg is bewitched by Miquella, which adds another tragic layer to Mohg's character. To what end Miquella has bewitched these demigods, I don't know. We really can't know until the DLC. But I'm sure it's not good, and I'm sure it's going to end in these people suffering terrible fates, as that's what seems to happen to everyone around Miquella. A little theory I've been toying with is maybe they are still soulless, but the whole bewitching part bewitches their body, and that sort of brings them back into this semi-state of soulfulness. Having the memories of the past, but not exactly being them, having this twisted self that Miquella has created for them. This is just my interpretation of the situation. It could be completely different and they could be in control, but from all the evidence that we currently have prior to the DLC releasing, and without looking at any of the DLC 3-hour long previews, as I'm sure there's some big lore implications in there, but I do not want to watch them at all, as they seem to be chocked to the brim with spoilers, and I want to be as blind as possible. It's really hard, no, screw that, impossible to put definitive answers on what exactly is going on, especially considering the DLC hasn't even dropped yet. Something I find super interesting that tickles at my noodle brain is the fact that on the Mausoleum nights, it talks about how they invoke the Deathbird. Now, all throughout Elden Ring, the Deathbirds are talked about. Not particularly a lot, but there's hints of them all throughout the game. The best example being, well, the Deathbirds, who are a remnant of a bygone age of the Ghost Flame. Now, the Ghost Flame is sort of seen as a mirror to Grace, which I have tons of thoughts on the Ghost Flame, and I'm not going to go into it fully here. But the important part is that it's in opposition to the Erdtree and Grace, which we know Miquella is. he's divested himself of all things golden. So doesn't it seem like a bit too much of a coincidence that the people he's trying to give souls back to, his soulless brothers and sisters, don't you think it's a bit too much of a coincidence that the people that protect them, how they became immortal to protect them, they invoked something that is in direct opposition of the Erdtree? Something curious about this is the fact that the Ash of War, the character that actually invoked this first, was given an Erdtree burial by the Golden Order. So that makes me think, well, surely that means that the Ghost Flame isn't in opposition to the Erdtree, or at least the Deathbirds aren't. But from everything we know, they should be against each other. It's a rival force that rivals the power of the Golden Order. Everything we know about Marika suggests that the Ghost Flame is like the Golden Order's kryptonite. It's like the direct opposite, and surely Marika would want to get rid of this. The best explanation I can think of personally is the fact that maybe at some point in time there was a division between Marika and the followers of the Ghost Flame. Now, what this division was and how it happened, I don't know. As for why she wasn't always against the Ghost Flame, I have a feeling it has something to do with a theory I've had for a little while now, and that is that Grace and the Ghost Flame are the same thing. Item descriptions constantly tell us and remind us of the similarities between Grace and the Ghost Flame. This whole theory started when I had done a video on the science of Elden Ring, and someone had started talking about endothermic reactions, which is basically cold reactions inside of chemistry, to do with some of the stuff and the flames within Elden Ring. And it got me thinking, hey, well, cold is actually just the absence of heat. What if Grace is the heat? And then the Ghost Flame is the absence of heat. It is the cold. So it seems to me like the lively vigour of heat has been taken away from Grace, and that is where the Ghost Flame is, this cold flame. And we're told exactly that. The Ghost Flame is described as cold. Now, I think this is even more reinforced by the fact that Miquella is said to have divested himself of all things golden. Now, going with my theory, if he's divested himself of his grace, then that grace is going to become this hollowed version, a cold, endothermic version of grace, aka what I believe would be the Ghost Flame. The whole connection to Miquella is further reinforced when you take into consideration that the people who are protecting the soulless demigods call upon this ghost flamey power with the Deathbird Rite. To me personally, it just all seems like too big a coincidence that Miquella's followers and allies just seem to be indulging in the Ghost Flame. Just wanted to mention this towards the end. I know that it does say in item descriptions that the Ghost Flame is from a previous age before the Erdtree, and I don't think this disproves what I've been saying. I think actually you could play into that and build upon that with this theory. You could say, well, hey, the Ghost Flame is from a previous age before Grace. Well, maybe there's some sort of root of Grace inside of the Ghost Flame instead of the other way around that I'd said. Maybe in this world, the cold and heat metaphor is opposite, so heat is the absence of cold. Not how it works in our world, but maybe that's how it works in the Lands Between. Sadly, we know basically jack shit about how the Lands Between actually works on a biological level. Maybe the DLC will show us more information about that, but I highly doubt it. So we can really just infer and try and figure it out for ourselves. And considering all of that, it's important to remember that this world does not play by our rules. We quite literally have space magic. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. We're so close to reaching 5,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for all the support recently. It honestly warms my heart and makes me so happy. Thank you so much. I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. I know I ramble at the end, so I'm going to keep this to a minimum. I really do hope you have a great rest of your day. And yeah, may you find your worth in the waking world. Goodbye everyone.